So let's get into Market Finder now. Let's do Arizona because that's an area that has some zip codes and stuff. I've never marketed there because it's just busy. So I think I'll use that one. So if I go to Market Finder, I can either select states here or I can click on Arizona here. I like to click on it, so I'm gonna do that. What it does next is it pops up. I'm gonna go ahead and zoom this out just a little bit because now we trying to view a map. That's good. Um, so it's going to show my counties. My very first thing that I want you guys to remember is that this map, the way that these heat mappings work, is it is taking averages from the top down, from the bottom up. So it goes neighborhoods, zips, counties. So just because this is dark and this is light doesn't mean that this light area does not have good zip codes or good neighborhoods. Okay. So please keep that in mind. Do not just write off certain areas because it doesn't have dark blue. That's why this is called market analysis. We're not saying this is where you need to go. We're saying use the tool to figure out where the communities and zip codes are that you want to be marketing. Now, obviously, this area has more dark blue neighborhoods and zip codes, or else it wouldn't overarchingly be dark blue, right? However, that's not also a 100% true statement because this could have only 3 zip codes and this could have 10. And 3 of these are still dark blue, but the other 7 are not at all because maybe it's rural on that West Coast. And so therefore it's dragging it all down. But down here in the bottom right corner, there could be some nice areas. So that's where if you're local to area, you probably know that answer a little bit, but like I'll give you an example. This still says 24 average monthly investors. Okay. If I click into that location, you see, like I assume that bottom right corner, because this down here was hot, this is a decent zip code. It's got 6 of those transactions, but these ones are none. So that's drawing down your averages quite a bit. But it doesn't mean that this would not be a good area to grab some records. I mean, days on market's only 45 or 54 there. But there's not a lot of homes that have sold. So it really goes down to how many records exist in 85348, right? If it's only like 1,000, it's like, okay, it doesn't hurt to add it into my campaign, but also I might not want to spend the bandwidth because I don't really care about that area. It's pretty low price point as well. So it just might not be, as of right now, looking at the averages of what is selling across all of Arizona, not much is in that 100,000 to 200,000 price point, let alone 0 to 100,000. So I don't know that I would really want to market that zip code because it's not, most people aren't moving to Texas or I'm sorry, Arizona to buy a house for less than $100,000. So there might not be enough demand for me to really, really care. So it's just got to take all that stuff into consideration. So let's go into an area that's a little bit bigger. Clearly one of these two is Phoenix. I don't know which one. Which one are you guys in?
We're in Pinal mostly is where we market, but Maricopa is Phoenix. So that
Okay.
big blue one right there is Phoenix. And then
I'll go in Pinal because it looks pretty good. So I'm gonna treat it as if I'm like I said, I have no idea about this area. I'm gonna do my own little market analysis, and then you can kind of tell me based on your guys' experience, like which ones you guys are getting the most in. And you may find that you guys are right on track, but you may find that you may be getting data for the whole county, and we can remove some of that and really focus into some specific neighborhoods potentially. Okay, so I'm
we're
gonna go.
actually in Pima. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's Pima, the
Oh,
bottom one.
bottom, even
Yeah.
better.
Okay.
All right, so we got Pima. All right, so we're gonna take Pima, and I want to look at the state as a whole real quick. Like I said, like I like to know why would someone move to Arizona, right? I want to think about the consumer, not myself. I want to think from the avenue of the person that's going to be doing that I'm going to be buying houses from, or going to be buying my flips, or going to be buying my flippers flips, right? And so I can see that predominantly Arizona is between 200,000 and 600,000 price point. That's going to be where I would say most, when you see that consolidation, your first time home buyers are going to predominantly be, or your workers class is going to be the majority of your purchases. And so it's also going to be the majority of people that move in and out of an area besides retirees. Okay. And so if someone's moving out of Arizona and they don't have a job, it's because like they can't afford Arizona, not because, they want to go buy something else more expensive somewhere else. Right. And so we want to focus most of our energy in that, in that price point of 200 to 600,000 in this case, which is going to be very similar across the nation for the most part, except for specific like counties and stuff. Even California is actually like there's a lot between 100 and like 400. It's just like you got the main cities that are super expensive. All right, which is true in like Phoenix and areas like that. If we now keep that in the back of our minds, um, we want to see the total amount of monthly investor transactions in the median home value within the state of Arizona. So I see my median home value, I see my monthly investor transactions, and I see my average prices across the whole area. The next thing I'm looking at is my home ownership rate. I see that currently 52% of Arizona is rented. That tells me it is a massive area for rentals. That's insane. This means that if I'm wholesaling or if I'm flipping, I need to make sure that I'm not flipping or trying to like buy properties at price points that people that are trying to buy and hold can't afford to rent them at. Like I can't sell, like if market rent on average is $2,000 across Arizona, I can't go be buying properties for $250,000 in rental neighborhoods and thinking that I'm going to be able to sell them to investors when they need 50,000 in rehab. Right. So it's just about having this generalized idea. Arizona, different markets and, are a little bit different on that. Like in Florida, you wouldn't be caught dead paying a 1% rule nowadays or 2% rule even, but, in bigger markets, it still happens. All right. We can see gross yield is actually really low. That means that, like that's actually, yeah, pretty damn low. Single family residences, land is really prominent. So when I see that land is very prominent, I'm going to come up here and automatically make this single family residence only, click apply. And I want to see how that changes my price point because that land could be drastically changing the values that I'm seeing here. Okay. And so now I see that predominantly for sure, 350 to 600,000 is, 44%, and 200 is now 28%, but 21% became 562. So we lost some of our bottom metric and it increased up to the top. So that makes a big difference. Some people just kind of do generalize based on the easy numbers rather than, kind of doing that extra analysis. And we can add in, townhouses and mobile homes if we wanted to see how that changes it, and that balanced it out even a little bit more. Some people don't want to buy mobile homes or townhouses. So therefore they only focus single family. You got to figure that out. But how we're going to figure that out is not based on our opinions. We're going to go look at what's on our competitors are buying, right? Because we want to be able to sell to them. That changed now our renters to our owners drastically as well. Now we got 60% owners. What this tells us is there's a lot of people holding land in Arizona. Now, does that mean there's an investor opportunity there? Maybe, maybe not. But there is a lot of people who are not, they're just buying, they're just holding and sitting on land for whatever reason. Okay. Could be a lot of developments. It could be a lot of different things, but we just know that at a high level. All right. Cool. So now beds and baths, we want to take a look at that. Generally, all I care about is seeing how many are predominantly on the low versus high end. That's a pretty big percentage being on the high end, 8.6% on 5 or more bedrooms. But obviously, 3 bedrooms is the sweet spot. So I would pull between 2 and 4 bedrooms. But if there's only like 1,000 properties that are over 5, I'd probably pull them as well. But if no buyers are buying them, flipping them because maybe the price point's too high, then that's something to consider, right? So between 2 to 4 bedrooms, though. Year built is important. We see that there's a lot of new construction in Arizona, a lot of newer homes in Arizona. Not very many properties were old in Arizona. 1940s and 1969 is only 12%. That's actually really low compared to like Pittsburgh. You got like maybe 10% or 5% 2000 or newer, and you got like 60%, 1940. Actually, you got like 60% 1939 or older. It's a lot of old properties. And so knowing this is important because it allows us, again, to narrow that target into what is the most prominent properties that are going to be being flipped. Okay. Right now in Market Finder, we're just wanting to get a high level idea. We're going to use sold properties to validate the zip code. Okay. All right. So now let's go ahead and go into this PEMA. And we're going to look in the bottom left corner. We see that the monthly investor transactions is 383. Homes sold, median home price. Look at that. It's right at that 331, 629. So we know that county from a state average is right in that sweet spot we want to be in. Okay. And then we see that the days on market is 54, which is pretty good because if we go back and we look at the days on market for Arizona as a whole, it's 56. So all of Arizona is selling pretty quickly. Go over to Florida, 71. Go over to California, 39. Crazy. Okay, so Arizona actually has a pretty good days on market below about 10 or 15 days below market average. So we know that, okay, if I was wanting to hop into Arizona remotely, I'm thinking, okay, this is looking pretty good, right? I'm fearful that I have a bunch of competition, but like I'm confident that I know how to, with the more competition means the more buyers I can get, which means that I just need to make sure I'm targeted with my marketing and I'm going to be able to succeed. Okay. All right. So now let me hop into PEMA. And from here, I'm now looking at a zip code level. Again, I'm going to remind you that just because a zip code is light blue does not mean that there isn't investor transactions. It just might have only one good neighborhood and like 7 bad neighborhoods. Okay. So you don't want to just take it at face value, but I do want to just hover over a few of these that are in this like center area because I can see that's probably predominantly where, there's like a bigger city or something maybe right in here that has multiple zip codes. And I'm just going to hover inside and I want to look at the monthly investor transactions and how many days on market with that median sales price. Okay, so I'm just going to generally get an idea. See like 53, 57, 48. So 85711 has 48 days on market. 16 investor transactions, 58. So I'm liking that zip code right now, but that it's in a good price point. It's got investor transactions happening. The things I need to be aware of, though, is what I mentioned earlier is just because something has a lot of investor transactions doesn't mean that it's the type of transactions that I want. We actually have an update coming to Market Finder here soon where you'll be able to see a breakdown of what type of investor transactions those are, whether they were flips, actively rentals, or wholesales or wholetails that created those 16 monthly investor transactions. And what percentage is higher, which will help that because the data does tell us this, or we've made it tell us this. But only local analysis will be able to actually tell me whether that's rentals or you might see a ton of investor transactions. I'm going to use staging to show you guys this in Market Finder. I'm going to go to Florida. I'm going to go to Okaloosa. This is one of my primary counties. Notice that it says that 32541 is like banging. 68 investor transactions a month. Now 81 days on market. That makes me want to puke. But it looks like at face value that it's a great market because it's got a lot of investor transactions. But look at the median sales price, 626. Look at the percentage that falls in across the whole county. I'm removing 90% of the people that I could sell to right off the rip. Okay. Why is that? Well, predominantly those investor transactions are Airbnbs, right? They're condos. If I were to remove only single family residences, notice it drops down to 29 investor transactions. It's still the median sales price is still up there across the whole zip code. But I know that, again, it's predominantly going to be like Airbnbs and stuff. So if I was an Airbnb investor, how could I validate that? Well, I could filter by Destin and that zip code on sold properties and just look at some of those investor transactions. You can very clearly see they're all Airbnbs. So that's why you can't just take things solely at face value. You got to go a little bit further to understand what's going on. So like if I see that screaming at me, that doesn't scream at me with 85711, but like that could be the case. Okay. The opposite's true where it's like a really crappy zip code. There's a lot of investor transactions, but it's a rental. So in this case, I'm going to select 85711 and I'm going to see it's 69% owners. So I know that those investor transactions are probably flips, not buy and hold investors, right? Because it's 70% of the people that are there are owner occupied, not rentals. Okay. And so I would be confident saying, okay, that's one of my zip codes. So what I do is I open up Notepad. All right. And what I want to do is I want to find at minimum my top three zip codes, right? I like to go up to five at least. And then at a certain point, if I'm like, I got a lot of zip codes, it might make sense just to pull the whole county and suppress out certain zip codes, right? Which we can do with advanced filters. But in this county, that doesn't look to be the case. All right. So I'm just going to go ahead and remove that for now. And I'm just going to look at some of these other zip codes. Instead of hovering at this point, I'm just going to scroll down. I'm just going to look at it from my table view to make it a little bit easier on myself. So what do I like to look at a high level here? I like to look at the total amount of transactions that are happening for investors. Remember, this is over 6 months. What I want to make sure I do is that I want to take, so 22 divided by 6 gives me 3 a month. I want to at least get enough zip codes to have 10 investor transactions happening a month within my marketing. Okay. Because that gives me the opportunity to make sure that I have enough data and enough opportunity to do deals consistently. If I'm going to be doing, my, a form of bulk marketing. Okay. And so I wouldn't only get 85746. It's not to say that I couldn't pull out 2 deals a month from there if I was being very technical. But for most operations, like, you don't have to be fully technical. You can be a little bit above that, and that's your blanket. And then, you want to be technical within that. And that's going to help you pull out data that or pull out deals from the within that ecosystem. All right. So I like to look at the amount of transactions, days on market. Like, look at this one. I'm sorry, days on market is over here. Days on market is 57. But look, this is 22 investor transactions, 57 days on market. This one's 21 investor transactions, 49 days on market, but it's double the price point, right? So internally, I have to understand, it's like, okay, well, do I want to pull and focus on properties within that price point? Well, what's going on in the overall county? How much of that is 542,000 to 516? That's within the 35%, but that's a pretty big range. I would say that this 540,000 price point is probably like in the top 2% of the 32%. You know what I mean? So it really depends on how many records meet that criteria. Because there's investor transactions, 85755, I'd look at where it's at. It's kind of north. So I don't know how long of a driving distance that is, but maybe that means that there's some opportunity there. Days on market's low. It doesn't look like a bad zip code to me. We would have to know, is it abnormal to flip those properties in that area, which would help out. What I can know is if I click on it, there's actually might be an Airbnb area. I don't know. 85755. I would Google it at this point. 85755 zip code. Get an idea of where that's at and what is this a snowboarding area? Is there cabins and stuff up in that area? It looks Oro Valley. In Utah, when I analyze Utah, these kind of zip codes when I start seeing photos like this, it's predominantly like, yeah, this probably, I'm guessing, I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I have to Google a little bit more, but I'm like iffy on that zip code now, just seeing that it's like a valley. And there was a valley in the name is to the north. That might be, those investor transactions could very well be Airbnbs. So I would go to Airbnb. I'd look at how many Airbnbs are on there. I get an idea. I would look at sold properties and see, are there a lot of holds that are happening there rather than flips? I get a generalized idea. That doesn't mean that I can't buy it. It just means that I might need to focus on a different buyer's list in order to sell to them. Airbnb. So I'd have to do my analysis. So 85755 is like on my iffy radar right now. So I do 85755, iffy. Maybe Airbnb. Okay. Someone that lives there locally, they're going to, know more about this than me. But for me as an outside investor, I would take that in consideration. Just because again, it's at that high side of the primary price points. Okay. And if I notice when I clicked on that zip code, within the zip code, 28% of them are that price point versus less. Again, I would look at the transactions that are happening, those 21 investor transactions could be happening in that lower price point, even though that zip code has higher price point sales. Once we skip down in the neighborhoods, this could make it very apparent as well. In fact, let's just do that now. So I'm gonna remember up here in this region. I'm gonna switch the neighborhoods. Oh crap. Oracle, Southwest Oracle off of 10. Switch to neighborhoods. Okay, so yeah, it looks like I think it's probably about right here. We have Sun City Oro Valley is 379. It's got 4 investor transactions. Catalia Shadows Estates, median sales price 610,000, 7 monthly investor transactions, 609 and 535. So only one neighborhood in that zip code that only accounts for 4 of the investor transactions is in that first time homebuyer price point. So that tells me that this is either a little bit more ritzy, maybe there's new construction going on, or maybe it's Airbnbs. So for me as an outside investor, I wouldn't hop into that area because I don't feel as though there's enough demand for me to spend marketing dollars there when there's a lot of other opportunity. So it would be a nay for me just off that initial without me Googling and figuring out more about it. Trinity?
I think it's mostly old people that live down there. I don't know if that helps at all, but I don't think it's a popular Airbnb
No.
area that I know of. I don't
Yeah,
think so, but
it might be like a snowbird type area because it's predominantly rentals, it says. So there's a lot of absentee owners, so that could be it. Like maybe they are elderly that come here and go, might be visiting in and out. So it could be there's opportunity there. Maybe they're flips. I would need to validate this by looking at transactions at this point, right? That's how I would do this. So that's why I put it as an iffy. I'm like, but we'll see. But yeah, that would make sense. If they are elderly, there could be a lot of rentals, but they're labeled as rentals just because they've been out of state for so long. They're not like living in the property.
gotcha.
So yeah. Okay, cool. So I continue to do this exercise, right? I'm gonna grab more investor transactions. I'm looking for that price point that makes sense to me. I like this 85706. So I'm gonna add that one, 85706. And then I'm gonna grab one more. It's a little bit higher, more days on market, 85746. 85746. Okay, so those are like my sweet spot kind of price points. This one's not bad either. 85614. It's down south. There's also Mount Wrights in there, so there might be maybe some rentals. I also like to know, I would Google, if it was me right now, I would Google if there's a university in this area, what kind of infrastructure is here. And I would also figure out what zip codes around that. And I would take all that into consideration, right? Because that does play a big part. But 85614, 85614. And I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 4. Everything else is so. But what I want to do is I don't want to just take, again, the zip codes for granted. So I'm going to switch it to neighborhoods again here. And I just want to look and see if there's any really big neighborhoods that are doing very well that I'm missing out on here. So 5, if I needed more, like if it didn't add up to my 10 transactions, I would get a lot more granular. Also, what I'm looking for is if I switch back this zip code, okay, and I look at this predominantly like 85746 and these ones that I've selected, when I switch back to neighborhoods, notice again, like there was a lot of blue here in a zip code, but it looks like it's mostly the tail side of this 3 points in this Tuscan Estates in a few of these other darker blue neighborhoods. But a lot of these don't have anything investor transactions, right? And so when I go to pull the data, I may only want to pull Tuscan Estates and Drexel Heights and 3 points Tuscan instead of that whole zip code because I'm getting a lot of nothing, that doesn't need to be sent mail, especially if I'm sending mail. That's especially if I'm sending mail. If I'm just cold calling, you could say like, doesn't really matter. I'm just SMSing, it doesn't really matter. But if I'm going to be sending mail, I don't want to send mail to these areas with very few transactions. All right, so just keep that in mind as well. That's another layer on top of this that we want to take into account. All right, really, really useful. Okay, so now that I've got the zip codes I want, I'm not going to go down into the neighborhoods level. Actually, in fact, let me just grab one of the neighborhoods. Let's grab this. I think that this. Let's find like our best neighborhood here, one that's really rocking. 62 days on market in that neighborhood. 94. Like I wouldn't buy. Like I wouldn't want this Midvale South. 94 days on market. 550,000. That's like in the top 20% of people. Like you'd be wasting your money marketing there. You might get a deal in there, but it's within the same zip code. But this one north of it's way better. It's 59 days on market. Like so, I would pull Midvale Tuscan before Midvale South, in order to reduce my direct mail costs and everything. Drexel Heights looks pretty good. 51 days on market. I think I'm gonna go San Carlos Tuscan because that one's got a pretty good percentage. So I'm just gonna select that so I can copy the name here, paste it in here, just so I can use as my example. All right, and then we're gonna move to sold properties. What we could do is we can click calculate here, and we can just get an idea in Prima, Arizona, how many total properties exist there with these property characteristics, and we can adjust these a little bit. We can see how many investor properties, which is the number of investor properties that match the property characteristics set above. And then investor transactions filters. So I could click view all right here. And this 76% means that the characteristics that are put here, notice the property value is 430,000 by the RIP. Is it 430 or is it 43? 43,000 up to 526 beds and bath. It only accounts for 76% of the actual sales, period, all sales that have happened within the county. So that's something I want to take into consideration. Like maybe they're upwards to 3,500 square foot. I can't change that. I'll do it from the other side. So we'll go to sold properties. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to search Arizona. Okay. And now I'm going to search for Prima. Okay. I'm going to do all time last 6 months here. Looks like the data was like dead there for a couple months. And then after I do that, I'm going to search my zip codes real quick. So we see it's a 52%. We do have from investor transaction flagging. Notice that it says 192 here. Something to be aware of is Market Finder is actually looking at a different data set right now. In staging, it'd be double the amount typically, because when we did our merger, we reassigned and did changes to the way that we flag investor transactions. Previously, we were only looking at like LLCs purchasing from individually owned, basically like a flipper buying a property. Right now, we're looking at like 15 different types of investor transactions. So there's a lot more. But right off the rip, this 50 to 100 for the investor AI score means that people have purchased at 52% in the months that we've had. I like to switch this to like 40 just to get an idea there. And you see that increases it quite a bit. So that tells me a decent bit about the market. But let's continue our analysis here. So what I want to do right away is I want to add my advanced filters, and I know that I only want to be looking at single family residences right off the bat, right? Actually, we ended up adding mobile homes and townhouses, so we'll add those, but we'll leave land out the consideration here. I'm going to click apply, and you see our prediction rate went up a bit there. The prediction rate doesn't matter right now in any of what I'm talking about. I'm just referencing it because it is a good indicator to tell me investor activity to AI score. So I kind of lean on that AI model a bit. But I'm not like, well, all that matters is that there was investor transactions. You know what I mean? And I can see what they are and how many they are. And that's all I'm really caring about right now. I'm caring about the patterns and what's going on. Okay. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to add my uh let's see, where is it at? Where is my value? Oh, estimated value. And I'm going to put this at the ranges that we were talking about. And I'm just going to go 200,000 to, I'm going to start on the lower end at like 425,000. So I'm going to leave those $500,000 properties out of the equation. Okay. I'm going to click apply. Now it dropped it down a little bit, but what I want you to watch here is investor transactions number, not connection rate or percentages. So just watch this investor transactions number. So let's remove that real quick and then click apply again. It goes to 154. So when I add that estimated value in there, it's narrowing down the types of investor transactions. And what I personally look for is I'm looking for me adding in a characteristic and not losing like 50% of my investor transactions, right? But it does tell me that there was 30 investor transactions over the last 6 months that were for above 400 some thousand. So I have to balance, is it worth me pulling that data to be able to have that opportunity? I would say 20, if you had 20 out of 154, that's 12%. It's a pretty significant number. I would probably leave it in if it was me. I would say, okay, well, let me now say 200,000. And let's just say we go all the way up to 600,000 and then click apply. We only lose 8, right? And so it's okay. 200 to 600,000 is like my range for estimated value, because just because the estimated value is that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm buying at that price, right? It's just like, hey, that gives me a range for the data set to pull. All right. And then I'm going to use my investor reverse engineering to figure out a little bit more. Okay. So I want to now add my zip codes into the equation, because if I leave my zip codes out that I've selected, I'm looking at the whole county, which could drastically change these numbers, which is why I wanted to do this value stuff first, because I want to show you how that affects it. So I'm going to grab each of my zip codes. I wonder what happens if I paste all of them at once. I don't think that'll work. Nope, definitely doesn't. All right, 85711, 85711. Select. Okay, we predicted 100% of those ones in that criteria. So that's great. That means we're on the right track. And if I were to look down here, I can look at some of those investor transactions. Look, KSW Properties is most of those. So if you don't, is that you guys? By a random chance? Or do you guys know KSW Properties, Trinity?
It's not us, but we know them. Yes.
Okay. So yeah, so they're a great buyer. They're doing deals in that area. So KSW Properties clear there. We got BDB Capital LLC. And what I can do is I can look at their purchase and I can start seeing what types of properties I like to validate, look at the square footage, if they're owned by corporate or not corporate, previously, things like that, and just get an idea. I want to look at those transactions that are happening, all the investments, all aspect construction remodeling, and then I like to look at the distressors that happen. So this was high equity, senior owners, high equity, probate senior owners. KSW was senior owners, high equity, tax delinquent, free and clear, estate sale, high equity, free and clear. Right. So it's giving me an idea of the distressors that are on these properties that these investors are buying. All right. And so that's just that one zip code within that estimated value. So let's remove the estimated value real quick and see how that changes. So there's one extra transaction. That's it that we get from a investor transaction. And it was a trust, and it was under the AI score range. We didn't predict it. It was 665,000. So it's outside of our really price point anyway. It's only being considered a investor most likely because these people may own more than one property, or they were given it and then resold it. And so it looks like I can't look at the thing. They probably inherited it and then resold it or something. It could not. They would have to have the right criteria to be an investor. We're triggering them out as an investor. I know that trusts and individual owners like Tyler Austin won't be considered an investor unless we see some sort of track record. So there must be something more with that family trust. Like they must own more than one property, not just to that local area, but like nationwide. Okay. All right. So let's add another zip code here. 85706. 85706. And then let's add our next one, 85746. 85746. Okay, and let's add 85614. 85614. So that one actually dropped us 10%. That last one, 85746. Was that the last one? 85614. So 85614. Where was that located? 856. So that was the one to the south. So that's interesting. I wonder if it's because of neighborhoods. I mean, you still got some pretty prominent neighborhoods down there, but they're 400,000, 428,000, 323. I mean, it seems pretty busy. Maybe
That's
the
a big
type.
snowbird retirement community down there, Green Valley, and we've
Uh,
done a few deals down there.
okay. So, okay. So maybe it's just they when we update the data set to show investor transactions, the other 14 that they weren't looking at, we might see this in uptick a bunch. It just might not be that those are predominantly flippers down there or buy and hold investors. It might just be something else. So, dang, Alta freaking busy, dude. They're even more on here now. So like,
That's our deal at the bottom, Applegate.
oh really? Right here? Nice. So I would open that up. Oh yeah. Do you guys like do a double closing or something?
Yeah, I bought it for a week and then sold it to the alt.
Yeah, I see that. Boom, boom. Right. So there it is. A nice little spread, dude. Bam. All right. So that's what I do. I start looking at these different transactions. What I'm really looking at here is what was the sale amount? That's important to me. Okay. I want to start seeing the sale amount, and we're actually adding, we don't have it on here. We only have home price, but we're adding another top pattern for sale amount, which would be really useful because then if I know the property characteristics and I know the average sale amounts, I know that I can just make offers. Right now I'm seeing if I was to hop in that area and I were to, have a property in that zip code that met this property characteristics in the right neighborhoods, I just know what I need to get it at for the most part. I know like I need to be around 150. Just looking at this page. If I'm around 150, I can sell a deal here. And I already know my 2 buyers, 3 buyers, 4 buyers, right? And I would continue looking here. I see now BDB Capital. Wait, it's a different one. Yeah, BDB Capital looks pretty busy. KMS Enterprises. So I'd take a look at these different transactions again. I'm looking at the sales price. I'm looking like this is a good one. So they bought it in October and they have it listed right now. So I know this is a flipper. I know this property is being flipped. So I know that I have those buyers. So I not only am I using this to reverse engineer my competition, figure out what properties they're buying. This is a 4-bed, 4-bath, 2345, 47. I want to look at some of that because I don't want to remove some of this property characters, 1,200, square foot. So I'm seeing like 1,000 to 3,000 square foot right now is kind of my scope. 1,500 predominantly. Most of these though, there's a quick double closing right there, 30K. I'm just getting an idea of what's going on, like 800 square foot. So there's a lot of variety here. So I'm like, okay, well, what is actually going on when it comes to the year built? Most of them, 70% of it's between 1940 and 2000. But there is stuff in, 28%, 2000 or newer. So I would probably pull 1940 to like 2010 is what I would probably pull in this area, just because I want some time for it to be flipped, unless I've seen otherwise. Property type, I would include single family and mobile homes. And then my predictive AI score, if I was looking at that, I would include down the 40 for sure. Right. And so As of right now, home price 215 to 346 is 62% of the sales, right? So I would pull, again, we've seen the number 200,000 to 600,000. That's really what's selling. So when I go to pull my list now from from SIFMap, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up SIFMap and I'm going to filter by, I'm just going to go straight to, was it Pena County? And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my more filters. I'm going to go to advanced geography and I'm going to add these zip codes here.
It's Pima, not Pinal.
Oh,
Pima.
I knew that. I was testing to make sure I remembered. Okay, so there's Pima. That's a lot more properties. All right, so we're gonna go to our zip codes again. 85711, 85711, boom. 85706, boom. 85746, boom. Well, 85746. There we go. 85614, 85614. Okay, so I'm going to add all those in, and I'm just going to click apply just to narrow me down to just seeing that data set. Okay, so if I zoom out, I can see like I got nothing to the north right now. I'm really south here. Okay, now I want to add my price for my estimated value. So I'm going to go between 200,000 to 600,000. And because I am in that 600,000 price point now, and I'm seeing sales are happening there after I went to sold properties, I would consider that top zip code as well if I needed more data, right? So I click apply. 45,000 records. So predominantly those areas are properties within that price point, and people are buying all across it. Beds and baths seems to be very variable, right? Looking at sold properties, we have bedrooms are pretty much across the board, not very many above 5 or more, but I doubt there's any properties that are very much 5 or more. Sometimes I like to validate that by just coming over here and let me just close some of this stuff out here. Close all those out. All right, so I'll just do like bedrooms 5 minimum and click apply and just see how many records I get. So it's only 294. So I'm not going to exclude them, right? But I do want to just be like, all right, I only want 2 or more bedrooms. I want to at least have like, depending on bathrooms, I might seclude and only do, well, it's enough a percentage where I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to include 1 or more. So I'm just going to do 1 or more. And then I'm going to include unknown. That's another big one because you might have a bunch of those older properties that it's unknown. So I'm going to say 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, unknown, and I click apply. That gives me 45,000 records. Now I'm going to switch to property types, single families and mobile homes only. Click apply. Gives me down to 387. Okay. So now I'm already like within my target. You know what I mean? Like I'm at where, the predominant amount of properties that are buying with or without AI score here, with or without distressors. If I want to do a blanket SMS campaign, I know every correct number that I gather here is going to be something that is valuable to the business, as long as I'm doing not interested follow-up and I'm doing all the other things that are important. Otherwise, I'm just kind of like blowing money out the window. But we can get ourselves even more dialed in by, of course, adding an AI score. I can't do this because I don't have this ad in my account, but like I could add 50 or more, and it's going to narrow that down about 50%. So if I want to just make sure I'm hitting everybody, in these key zip codes, but I want to give myself a closer target to the people that are higher likelihood, because based on sold properties, we're predicting over 70% of the investor transactions that do happen since October, November. And so we know that those AI scores are producing results. And because we're local to that market and we know some of these names, we know that like the properties they're buying, if I was just focusing on AI scores of between 40 and 100, like I could have put myself in a position to have those deals. As a wholesaler, I might have already done that, right? Because I might have wholesaled some of these deals to these people. That deal that you had before actually was only an AI score of 38. It was senior homeowners and free and clear. So that, either you're focusing on the bottom end. Oh, you know what? I might have updated, but that's still a lower score, right? So, it really depends. You got to put the sweet spot of the AI score with the amount of records you want. Just know, like, if you get below, I would say like 20 or so, like you're basically, you're basically just pulling like everything. You know what I mean? So the higher ends of that is the AI score's value is in being able to narrow down the data to be able to reduce your marketing costs. So it's great for direct mail. It's great for deep prospecting to be able to say, hey, if I got like 1,000 people I need to deep prospect, who are the top 100 I need to focus on? Like AI score is really good to narrow in and say, okay, these are the people I want to focus on. If I want to just do wider than that, then it loses its value a little bit because if you were to hit every single family residence in Tuscan or this whole area, then obviously they're in there somewhere. It's designed to reduce the marketing costs. Now, what I do have the capability to do here is I can add in some other distressors to try to narrow down this 338,000 into some other campaigns that are valuable to me. Okay. And I can do that by looking at the investor transactions that have happened, but I'm also just going to look at this distressors pattern here. So I see that predominantly 40% of these properties are free and clear. 32% have high equity, which means that 70% of these properties have had equity. So right off the rip, if I didn't have an AI score, most AI data is going to have some form of equity because of how the model works. But just because something has equity doesn't mean that they're like motivated to sell either. So it's not always going to be the same records. And if I filter one and then I filter the other, it might be the same amount of records, but it's not going to be the same records, entirely always. So I'll just put a minimum of 30% equity and then click apply and then see how that affects me. That brings me down to 32,000. So remove 6,000 people. Okay. Now, obviously, there's 30% of the people that did sell that, might have only had 20% equity based on what we're seeing here. Of the people that did sell, 31% of them were absentee owners. Now, that means that 70% were not absentee owners. And this is really important. A lot of people, they go like, oh, well, I want to just focus on only absentee owners, right? Because it's easier to do those deals. And that's great, and there might be a decent amount of records, 10,000, but you're losing 70% of the potential to get a deal. And this is why newer investors kind of mess up a little bit because they're trying to narrow down the amount of records they're getting. They think that absentee is more motivated because they're thinking selfishly. Absentee removes a barrier, yes, but it doesn't change motivation. It just makes it easier to conduct a transaction. And when you look at it from the perspective that only 30% of the sales that happen were absentee, compared to the 70% that weren't, it means that really you need to focus in on a neighborhood or a different avatar and market to both owner occupied and absentee to put yourself in the highest position to actually get a transaction. Okay. And so absentee and high equity, I see are good, and senior owners, right? And so an easy thing for us to do is to just filter out. I don't care about absentee, so I'm just going to put that back to any. Put that back to any, and then I'm going to go to my distressors here, and I'm going to switch it to custom, and I'm going to add senior owners in here, one of our premium distressors. And I'm going to click apply, and that's going to narrow me down actually to 10,000 people. So I went from 34,000 down to 10,000 because I said, hey, they have to have equity and they got to be senior owner. Okay. And so now if I was to add an AI score on top of this, I would end up having 3,000 people or 2,000 people or something that are hey, I need to be sending those people mail because they got a high AI score and they're senior owners and they basically fit the top, 90% criteria of what is selling to investors. Okay. So I hope that makes sense. If I was to start doing first to market, I would start pulling tax delinquent properties of the county because that accounted for 20% of the sales. What else I could do is I could say, hey, you need to have equity and you got to be tax delinquent or, senior owners. So you have to have at least one of these, or I could say you have to have both of these if I wanted to. But I'm going to click apply and see how many that gives me. Not very much more. Okay. I may need to zoom out a little bit. Maybe it changes just a bit. Yeah, there you go. Let's say, it seemed like it wasn't enough. So 11,000 now matches that criteria. So you're either tax delinquent, senior owner. The next layer of this is going to be like figuring out, well, how many of them were, like how long have they owned the properties? We can see that tired landlord is a 15%. If they have high equity, typically they're going to be, own it for more than 5 years, depending on how much they put down. All right. Pre-foreclosures all look good too, but these are all different campaigns. Right now, I'm just looking for that base campaign that I want to really focus the most of my energy on. But I would also want to focus on just all the stacked properties too. It's all individual different campaigns. Right now, I'm just trying to teach you guys, if I was to go get a list and it was me hopping into a new market, like who would I, through my market analysis, like how would I figure out that best list for me to focus on? You will widen this list and narrow it down based upon your budget and your initiatives as a company. Okay. So I got 11,000 right now. I'm going to say that I'm going to add at least 10 years of ownership onto this. So I want you to be a senior owner, and I wanted you to at least own it for 10 years, just because I see that 13% of the sales were, tired landlords, which means that I'm probably predominantly going to be looking at absentees, but that put me at 5,000. 5,000 people. So it cut me in half again. Maybe it's a little bit more if I zoomed out. No, didn't look like it. So most of these individuals, whether they're owner occupied or absentee owners, they are now in a very tight criteria for me to focus on as an investor that has access to our distressor data set, has used our market analysis, used our sold properties, found the best zip codes, and really dialed in to those specific people. Of course, again, I am narrowed in right now to a very specific criteria. If I wanted to, I could go to sold properties and I could add all that criteria here, right? Equity percentage 30 or more minimum. Let's see how that changes, right? It didn't change much at all there. All right. And then I could add in my estimated value back, my bed and bath size, and then those distressors to figure out how many of those distressors, accounted for the 33 investor transactions that happen. But, there's a point in which you can go too granular. You do need some records, right? You need to keep it wide enough to where you can receive opportunity. And it depends if you're doing click-to-call marketing or if you have a dialer or if you're doing direct mail, all these things to consider. But the last thing that I like to do once I get dialed in, like, okay, I like senior owners. I like that they have equity. They can be tax delinquent. That's fine too. They're in my best zip codes. Absentee, not absentee, doesn't matter. They've owned it for at least 10 years. I know that these people, if I get them under contract, like I'm confident about it, right? And I already know roughly the price points that I would need to get a contract under at. If the value is, X amount of dollars, I need to get it under contract for X because I can see the sale amounts that happen from my other investors, right? And so, what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of hover over again some of these deals and that sold and look at the distressors. So pre-foreclosure, high equity, senior owners, high equity, tax delinquency, high equity, senior owners, probate, senior owners, high equity. So because this is senior owners and pre-probate, because I'm pulling the senior owner data, I'm obviously also pulling pre-probate, right? So I'm just not specifically saying that they have to be pre-probate. Pre-foreclosure, senior owners, so to wrap up into senior owners again, pre-probate would be the problem they sold. Senior owners would be the trigger on how I found them, right? Senior owners, free and clear. And so I see predominantly a lot of senior owners here. So I would be silly for me to not hit every senior owner in every one of these zip codes, right? Barrett?
Hey, I was just wondering, can you enter addresses one by one? Because we were thinking we could put in all of our closed deals in this county from last year and see what those filters were.
Yeah, you can. You could do I'm just thinking how you seem to see what distressors were on them.
Yeah, exactly. Just to see if we could just notice a trend with all the ones we tend to be.
It would probably be too long. The record probably would have already reset it in the database unless it was in the last 6 months. So I would only add things in the last 6 months. Also, we would have had to have identified it as an investor transaction and the type of transaction you did. If it was like maybe you did like maybe you did like some double closings or some flips like might not show up right now until this launches. I have to just give the green light for it to launch. I just haven't had time to to analyze
gotcha.
it. So you might add it and it might not be flagged as an investor transaction, but it would be under all transactions. Like it just might not be flagged as investor. So if you do that and it's been within the last 6 months, just like this one, we can see this was senior owners free and clear. So we know it's that. If I click on in my records, like let's say you manually added each of those records under the records page like this, go to the records page, click on add new property. If you typed one of those addresses, let's just say it's this one here. Oops, I didn't mean to open it. I can click that address, and what it's going to do is it's going to automatically populate it, and then it's going to find the owner, and then click continue, and then you can add it to your account. Just know like it would have already sold by now and things like that. But what it will do is it'll show, let me do it like this. I'll show you Okaloosa here. Actually, I'll show you Pasco because that's the one that pisses me off the most. We'll do Pasco County. Click in my records. You can see all the deals that were in my account that I was actively marketing to that I lost to other investors that were not me. Right. And so that's what you can see if you do add it into your account, which is nice because then I can go in here and be like, oh, well, what did I do to this one? Was this one like what happened here? Okay, well, clearly it was distressed. I can see who bought and sold it. And then I can click open in Sift records. And this will open up in my account. And I can see like we haven't cold called it. We never sent it mail. That's because I basically added Pasco County. I was planning on starting to market there last year and we never started. And then I can go in there now and see all that AI data that I added, that all of it now, that was the scores they had. Obviously, really good scores. I could have just focused on 80 or more AI score and put myself in the highest opportunity to get deals. And I didn't do the marketing. Life happened, work happened, yada, yada. So, yeah, it's a really useful tool to be able to reverse engineer yourself. So yeah. Okay. Moving, closing those out. Oops, I just closed the one that we wanted. This one. Yeah. Okay. So what I would do then is I grab these records, I'd select them all. I click add to account and I'd name it whatever list I want. Okay. You could just do like, Pima, Target, Zips, top 5 or whatever you want. You could add no list and just add tags. Right now, if you download from SIFMap, every list that's possibly on, like we're filtered by senior owners. So you could just add this to a senior owner list. Like you could add it to multiple. You could say senior owners because I know for certain that they're senior owners, right? And then you could add it to, top 5 as a zip code, whatever, but choose like a core name. Here, I don't know when it'll be finished, but when you download a record from SIFMap, we're going to just automatically add lists that are based on the list that we have in our database. But right now, this is no different than you like downloading the list, from, anywhere really. You download whatever you think. When you're combining all these different criteria together, it's more like it's not like a singular list. I mean, I guess this most singular list this is high equity, so you name it whatever you want. But again, in the future, we're gonna add those lists automatically to the records page. And like I mentioned earlier, we're actually going to be, let's say you download senior owners today, and then this property sells. It's no longer owned by a senior owner. On your records page, we would tell you, hey, it's no longer a senior owner, and also it's sold. So update your sold date and what do you want to do with the record, right? So we'll be letting you continue to keep that records page hygienic and up to date. But anyway, so you add that to your account. Once we've added that to our account, we go to our records page. All right. And now this is where we can have a flow set up to understand who are the ones that we haven't marketed to yet and who have we. All right. So for example, let's just say you're a cold calling operation. I have this bulk pool here. One is what I call it. It's called a pool because it's just like a bunch of different records that's under it. And if I open that up, if I have unlimited skip tracing, then this stuff is already going to be skip traced. But in this case, I'm just, saying, hey, I don't want them to have these lists on it because maybe I uploaded lists in the past or whatever. As long as it has these lists, in this case, it'd be like, top 5 zips, Pima, or whatever. And then you wouldn't worry about the state or anything like that. I don't have any property status on it. Really, this could be updated into do not include any status, which would be a lot easier. I just never updated that after we came out with that. Call attempts are equal to 0, or maybe it's SMS attempts or direct mail attempts, whatever marketing I'm doing. You can then filter by absentee, which is another reason why I always say just pull the absentee data anyway, or the owner occupied and absentee, because I can just in my records page filter out absentee or not. So I'll just say absentee yes if I want to narrow that down. Otherwise, who cares? I can leave it open. And then I could say numbers no, skip trace no, click apply. And this would give me 21,000 records that I have not skip traced that's inside my account. Again, if you already have unlimited skip tracing, which like this stuff was in our account, my account before unlimited skip tracing launched. Right now, if anything enters my account that hasn't been skip traced, it automatically skip traces it. So right now, this filter from any customer that's started in the last month or so or 2 months, like it's going to be empty. But once I skip trace it, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at what do I need to call, what's ready for marketing. So this would be the exact same filter. Call attempts are equal to 0, but yes, I do have phone numbers, and click apply. So in my account, that's 51,000 records that have phone numbers that are on those lists that that haven't been marketed to yet. So I could select these 51,000 people now, send to integrations, and send it right over to my smart dialer campaign to start cold calling, right? And then my dialers start calling. And so basically you create a data sequence where you say, okay, I'm going to analyze the market at the start of the quarter. We're going to pull our data every month. We're going to check to see if any new data matches that criteria that we're pulling. And then if there's new data that matches our criteria, we're going to, click on the ready to market. We're going to click apply. We're going to send it to whatever marketing channel we're doing. And then anything that we've already marketed to, we call these rehash campaigns. You call it whatever you want. In this case, I just called it bulk cold call attempt 1 plus. So it's saying, hey, this is all my records that have one or more attempt on it. Click apply. And I just continue to send these for marketing every single month. Now, as I market, whether it's SMS, cold calling, whatever, some of these records are going to end up ultimately, I go up to 6 times, by the way, for my cold calling, or when we were calling this list. We go to six times. And after that, every time we finish a campaign, or even on a weekly basis, we're going to be looking at who are the people out of this bulk cold calling initiative that are like fully exhausted. Like maybe I need to send mail to them because of like there's different criteria. I don't want to send mail to this whole list, but maybe I want to send mail to just the absentee owners and the ones that are fully exhausted phone numbers. So if I do a filter block here and do phone statuses, and I say, hey, I want all phone numbers on this record. This is the part where you can steal deals from your competition, or one of the ways to steal deals from your competition. I can say all phone numbers are wrong, dead, DNC, or wrong DNC. Basically, every phone number on a record has a status, but none of them are a correct number. Okay. And then I click apply. And in my account right now, there's 537 records that meet this criteria. Like this one was from 919 days ago. Click into that record. Oh, I hate this street. You see, we've called them. It was 2 times that we called them before every phone number was wrong or dead. We ended up skip tracing it at some point. Okay. Oh yeah. So wait, what happened? It came inbound. Oh, it came inbound on a Dataflick list after the fact and gave us a new number from Dataflick. That's what it was. Okay. So in this case, like we didn't get a hold of these people. We marketed it. Every number is wrong or dead. We're going to now deep dive this person. Let me see if I lost this deal already. No, still there. 89% equity. So that's good. So basically we'd start deep diving it. So if we look at a few more records, this one had 1 phone number on it. It's a dead number from cold calling. This one's got a decent value on it, but it was seniors, distress, bankruptcy. Go to Zillow. That one ain't sold or anything. So that's good. And that's 500 some records. How do I narrow down those 500 records down to like people that I really want to focus most of my energy on? I could, there's a few ways I could do. I could be like out of state. I could say that they at least have to have like maybe, I don't know, pre-probate or something. Click apply. That none meets that criteria. What if they're in state? I could kind of do whatever I want here in terms of trying to narrow that down. So nothing matches that criteria. It's because oh, you know why? Look at this. I got these ones in there. Let's just remove that. No, nothing there. I'm surprised I got no pre-probate that are fully exhausted. What about seniors? There we go. 13 senior owners. Stonehenge Drive. Zillow. Oh, this one sold. I lost this deal, I'm pretty sure. I think what's his name bought this, right? Yeah. Yeah, see, that's a good example. So I lost this deal. So this one needs to be, it's funny how we recognize deals through Google Street Views. That's sold. I lost the deal. Okay, it was never a lead. It was a dead number. He got it. I didn't. Here's all the problems that were on it. All because, we didn't do the full process, right? We didn't take on a weekly basis. We didn't filter by this criteria and make sure somebody dig deep and got a hold of the family members or door knocked or did whatever. And I know that, he doesn't buy anything unless he's going to make, 30 to 50K at minimum. He's a pretty big buyer. He buys like 10 flips a month or something like that, roughly. So he's going to make a little rip off of it. It is what it is, right? So again, that's of 13. That's 1 out of 13 that just now. There's probably at least 3 to 5, if you click through all these where, it would have sold because you would have never got a hold of them if you were only doing cold calling. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles, All right. Sweet. So just to give an idea, was not the point of this, specific call isn't really to dig deep in the actual conduction of marketing, but I wanted to make sure you guys understood that once you download the data, the point is to create a filter. It's like, hey, what needs skip trace? What needs to go to marketing? What's been marketed to, whether you're using tags or call attempts or SMS attempts or however. And then you really want that next one. It's like, hey, what has been marketed to? And every number is wrong or dead, or we're just not reaching them after a certain amount of attempts. Because at minimum, after 6 attempts here, I would want to start SMSing, right? So maybe there's people that have more than 6 cold call attempts, okay? But then SMS attempts are equal to 0, which would mean that these are now ready for SMS. So I would call through them 6 times. Anybody I didn't reach now, I would put them into an SMS campaign for 3 to 6 times. And now I'm putting myself in front of them in 2 different methods. And then anybody who I didn't get in contact through cold calling and SMS, now maybe I send direct mail. But all the while, I was direct mailing the people that were really targeted that I found through my market analysis, that fit the largest percentage of sales, right? So there's a lot of ways to skin this up, but just know that there's a whole world there for you to delve into in order to get the most out of the data once you bring in the data. But it all starts with proper marketing processes. Okay. It all starts there, or proper market analysis, right? We want to make sure we're hitting the right people. And then once you start generating those leads from there, it's super simple, right? It's just a matter of that status updating the new lead, and then we can use our records page and filter by, lead management folders with, call new leads, unqualified leads. If you want to delve into the world of, just managing your leads in here, throw them on a drip campaign if they start ghosting you and all that good stuff. Like I said, I'm going to do another training solely around lead management, what those flows look like, the do's and don'ts and all that good stuff for users as well. And I'm just going to continue to do a call like this, analyzing a different market every single week. And then we'll get into the lead management stuff at another time. But I find that with these new tools being in here, it's really important to have this and make sure people understand how to analyze, because there's a lot of power behind, figuring out what zip codes, what neighborhoods, and then what those investors are looking like that are actually buying those deals. Another thing that I wanted to do is I want to show you a neighborhood. So let's remove real quick all these zip codes. I'm going to remove the senior owners and the tax delinquents real quick. I'm going to remove these zip codes. I want to add this neighborhood, San Carlos. I called it Tuscan earlier. It's Tucson. I'm an idiot. I just realized I said that. All right, so I'm going to choose that neighborhood, and then I'm gonna remove 10 years of ownership too. I'm just going to keep it back at like that kind of base list that we had. We'll keep the equity in there. Okay, I'm gonna click apply. I'm gonna see how many records are just in that community. So there's 1,000 properties in that little community. To remind you, on Market Finder, if I go to Arizona, go to that location, go to that neighborhood, just go straight to that neighborhood. It was basically one deal a month, because again, it says 5, but this is really 10, honestly, because again, it's only right now, this sold property is only looking at one type of investor transaction, but it's got a low days on market. Okay. It's only got 25 houses on market, which tells us that like probably when something posts up there, it's probably sells pretty quickly. It's probably a pretty hot area to keep that's a 20% sale rate, right? If there's 25 on market and there's 4 that sold last month, okay, that means that there's a nice turnover there. It's probably just taken 30 days for these things to close right now, but they're probably going under contract in probably like 7 to 9 days, maybe 10 days. And then they're closing, 3 weeks later. Okay. So good price point. And so I can input that neighborhood, and what I would do and what I do in Okaloosa County is I have 3 neighborhoods that I just hit everybody in the neighborhood. I'm not biased against nobody. But I only focus on individuals for the most part, on like direct mail. On cold calling, we do LLCs. I just don't like mailing businesses. So that's 703. And then the next thing I want to do is make sure they haven't sold in the last 5 years. So I do add back my aids of ownership. I do 5 years. And this is what we consider neighborhood farming. So that's 500 people. So I would, without a doubt, make sure that if I'm sending mail, at minimum, if I don't have a massive mail budget, and I want to make sure I'm doing some targeted campaigns, this community, I would be calling through these 477 people. I would be sending a mail. And this would be click to call. It wouldn't be through a bulk dialer. I'd download them and I'd be like, hey, when you have nothing to do, you're calling every one of these. And if we don't get a hold of somebody, we're digging into them, especially, if we see that there's some other sort of vexation. But that's called neighborhood farming. And you want to do that to 3 to 5 neighborhoods in your market if it can support it. And that's basically taking the age-old realtor model. You guys know how like there's realtors that will put like the magnets in your mailbox on New Year's and these different holidays. Like they own that neighborhood. Like everybody in that neighborhood knows that. Like I can't remember her name. I think her name was man, I can't remember her name, but I can see her face. I can see her hair. I can see everything. I know like she knows that market really well. And as you get deals in that zip code and you flip them, now what you can do is you can go back to that neighborhood. And if you do get a deal in any neighborhood, and can support it, I would filter by the neighborhood and just send a mailer and say, hey, we bought this deal down the street. We're looking to buy more, and put a photo of that property on that postcard. Hey, we bought this house. Like you can do a custom postcard under our direct mail and mail just those people pointing out the property you did buy, and you're looking to buy more. I can offer you at least 10% more because I'm already flipping a property in the neighborhood. Whatever you want to say to get the phone call to come in. All you're trying to do is gather correct numbers. If you spend $500 or even say $3,000 in the year, and you gathered nothing but correct numbers here, let's say it's like 100 correct numbers, that's still, I would pay that all day long, $30 per correct numbers or whatever that is, $300 a correct number, because I know that over the course of the next 2 years, I'm going to produce revenue from that. All right. I know that I'm going to get some deals. It's going to be a good ROI because this neighborhood's good. It's the right avatar. That correct number, not interested, is going to do dividends over time. Right. So I just challenge people to change the way that they think sometimes about the way that we market, and know that you're trying to gather those correct numbers. You're doing market analysis to try to dominate specific locations that are really hot. And every quarter, we want to make sure we're looking at this because we want to try to get into that next hot neighborhood before our competition, right? We would rather have like 3 to 6 postcards in that neighborhood that is the next up and coming neighborhood before, the next ring of investors decides to start marketing there. So anyway, just wanted to show that neighborhood filter. It's really powerful.